Mardyatul, MIZA, and everyone. Welcome to our presentation. We are from Group 6 and we will be presenting the best two companies of our choices for their financial statement analysis. The Malaysian economy is the 6th largest in Southeast Asia and the 39th largest in the world, according to the International Monetary Fund or IMF. The Malaysian economy has exhibited signs of contraction for the year 2020. This is the result of the COVID-19 epidemic, and it is now underway. It has an effect on the entire country, not just Malaysia. The consumer sector in Malaysia is significant since it is well-known. It has numerous well-known brands to support one another in daily lives. So in this study, we have chosen Pelikan International Corporation Berhad and Jaycorp Berhad as two different companies under the same sector of consumer products and services, which are listed in Bursa Malaysia. A Malaysia-based company called Pelikan International Corporation Berhad. It has writing instruments, art, painting, and hobby supplies. School and workplace stationery and papeterie goods are all produced and sold by Pelikan, and also its subsidiaries. The parent corporation of all Pelikan organizations globally is Pelikan International Corporation Berhad. About 5 heavy industry facilities and more than 22 owned sales and marketing offices, including the Malaysian operations, support the company's operations globally. So despite relatively stable revenue growth, Pelikan increased their net income from 688.99% from 10.78 million to 85.08 million to over the past year. Let's continue to Jaycorp. Investment, holding and management services are two of the businesses that Jaycorp is involved in. The company's 4 business divisions include rubber wood furniture, packaging, rubber wood processing, and general trading division. Malaysia and the rest of Asia, North America and Europe are among of its geographical parts. So biomass, water management and renewable resources are all the activities of sustainable energy. The others division offers transportation services, real estate leasing, publishing, general building projects and civil engineering work. Revenues for Jaycorp Berhad ramped up 14.12% year over year from 309.35 to 353.03, while net income soared 70.70% from 17.40 to 29.71. I think that is enough a brief for these two companies. We will be moving on to the analysis part of our study.
Thank you to the previous presenter. Assalamualaikum, my name is NASHATUL and I will continue this presentation by showing you the liquidity ratio. Giving you a brief explanation, liquidity ratio is used to indicate the company's capacity to settle its immediate financial commitments. From current ratio, we can evaluate a company's capacity to meet short-term financial commitments with 1 year maturity. We can see that whether the business has the funds that is necessary for them to pay their creditors when it is due. Higher current ratios indicate that the corporation has more flexibility to pay its creditors on time. So to start with current ratio, in order to get the current ratio, the company's current assets will be divided with the current liabilities. For Pelikan International Corporation Berhad, we will get 1.36 to 1. So from every 1 ringgit of current liability, the company has 1 ringgit and 36 cents of current assets to repay its current liability. As for Jaycorp Berhad, the company has 2.95 to 1. It means that for every 1 ringgit of the current liability, the company has 2 ringgit and 95 cents of current assets to repay its current liability. From the current ratio calculation, we can see that both companies have no problems in paying back their short-term financial obligations. However, Jaycorp Berhad had a higher current ratio as compared to Pelikan International Corporation Berhad, in which can be concluded that this company can pay off their short-term debt more easily. Jaycorp Berhad also has more remaining of current asset as compared to Pelikan International Corporation Berhad. Jaycorp Berhad also will easily able to pay off their current liabilities. Secondly is quick ratio. So the calculation for quick ratio, we will exclude the least liquid asset, which is the inventory, as inventory need to be weighed for a certain time before it can be converted to cash. Quick ratio will assess the company's capacity to satisfy its immediate financial obligation with the most liquid assets. In order to calculate quick ratio, the company's current assets will minus the inventory and divide it with its current liabilities. So for Pelikan International Corporation Berhad, we get 0.9321. It means that for every 1 ringgit of current liability, the company has 93 cents of its liquid asset to repay its current liabilities. As for Jaycorp Berhad, we get 2.0421. It means that for every 1 ringgit of current liability, the company has 2 ringgit and 4 cents of its liquid asset to repay its current liability. So from that calculation, we can see that Jaycorp Berhad has high liquidity level as for having high quick ratio. In contrast to Pelikan International Corporation Berhad, the company did not have enough current assets to pay its current liabilities after subtracting it with the inventory. Hence, Jaycorp Berhad is able to pay its short-term debt with its most liquid assets as compared to Pelikan International Corporation Berhad. Okay, that's all from me. Thank you.
And Assalamualaikum, my name is AINAA. Now I'm going to explain about profitability. Profitability has 4 ratios, which are gross profit ratio, net profit ratio, return on capital employed, and also return on asset. So now I'm going to start with gross profit ratio. According to Pelikan International Corporation Berhad and Jaycorp Berhad has the higher ratio, which is 20.89% than Pelikan, which has 4.50% gross profit ratio. Jaycorp can generate 20 ringgit 89 cents of gross profit for every 1 ringgit of sale, while Pelikan can only generate 4 ringgit 50 cents of gross profit, which is lower than Jaycorp. The gross profit between these two companies shows that Jaycorp has better performance than Pelikan. If the ratio is high, it means that the level of high profitability is good. Next, net profit ratio. Pelikan International Corporation Berhad has generated 9.30% of net profit, while 8.07% for Jaycorp Berhad. According to this, Pelikan has better or greater net profit compared to Jaycorp Berhad, as it has higher rate of profitability. Pelikan able to generate 9 ringgit 30 cents of net profit for every 1 ringgit of sales. Now I'm going to continue with return on capital employed. For this ratio, Jaycorp Berhad earned 17.8% of operating profit, lower than Pelikan International Corporation Berhad, where it is amounted 19.76%. It shows that Pelikan International Corporation Berhad has higher return on capital employed, and it will indicate a stronger profitability than Jaycorp Berhad. Lastly, return on asset. For Pelikan International Corporation Berhad, the company earned 7.39% of return on asset, while 10.82% for Jaycorp Berhad. Between Pelikan and Jaycorp present better performance, more efficient, and productive at managing its balance sheet to generate profits, where Jaycorp earned 10 ringgit 82 cents for every 1 ringgit of sales than Pelikan, which can only generate 7 ringgit 39 ringgit for every 1 ringgit of sales. That's all from me. Thank you.
Hi, my name is AINNAZURAH and I will talk about efficiency ratio. Efficiency ratio is measurement used to assess a company's capacity to utilize its resources, such as capital and assets, to generate profits. It indicates the effectiveness in assets utilization and generating revenue. As a result, if the efficiency ratios have increased over time, it may imply that the firm has gotten more productive. First and foremost, inventory turnover. It is the number of times a company sells out its inventory in a certain period of time. For Jaycorp Berhad, it takes the firm 6.16 times to replace its inventory, while for Pelikan International Corporation Berhad, it takes about 4.64 times to replace their inventory. Hence, it means that their inventories are more productive, resulting to more profitability. Secondly, average collection period is the number of days it takes on average to collect lend money from clients. The method is used to assess the efficiency of a company's credit granting procedures and collecting activities. For Jaycorp Berhad, it takes them about 37.77 days to collect its debts from their account receivable. As for Pelikan International Corporation Berhad, it takes them about 84.11 days to collect the debts from their account receivable. This shows that Jaycorp Berhad is better at collecting debts from their account receivable. Last but not least, total asset turnover is a financial efficiency ratio that analyzes a company's capacity to produce revenues from its assets. Management uses the total asset turnover to judge how efficiently the company is using its assets to generate income. For Jaycorp Berhad, the firm generates RM1.34 of its sales from RM1 of its total asset, and as for Pelikan International Corporation Berhad, the firm generates RM75 of its sales from RM1 of its total asset. This indicates that Jaycorp Berhad earns more profit from its total asset compared to Pelikan International Corporation Berhad.
Thank you, AINNAZURAH. Now I will explain about leverage. Leverage ratios measure the level of debt or borrowing in a company. Leverage ratios also present how a company can pay for long-term obligations such as non-current liabilities. We can also see the company's dependency on equity, which is an internal source of capital, and liabilities, which is an external source of capital. When a company has a lower ratio, it shows that the company has a lower financial risk. On the other hand, a company that has a higher time interest earned indicates better performance of the company. Firstly, debt ratio shows the financial structure of a company. The lower debt ratio is good since it will reduce company's risk of insolvency. This indicates that the company is less reliant on debt. For Pelikan International Corporation Berhad, 66.02% presented how much the company is financed by debt, and the balance of 33.98% is financed by asset. On the other hand, Jaycorp Berhad has amounted to 24.96% financial dependency on debt and a balance of 75.04% on asset. The debt ratio of both companies shows that Jaycorp Berhad has better debt ratio than Pelikan International Corporation Berhad. Next, debt to equity ratio compares a company's total liabilities to its shareholder equity. In general, a lower debt to equity ratio is preferred as it indicates less reliance on creditors. For Pelikan International Corporation Berhad, 194.28% of debt which was used compared with total equity, while Jaycorp Berhad amounted to 33.26% of debt which was used compared with total equity. In this case, Jaycorp Berhad has better debt to equity than Pelikan International Corporation Berhad as it has lower leverage and has more stable financial structure. Lastly, time interest earned indicates how many times a company can settle its interest of debt. The higher the number shows better competency of the company. For Pelikan International Corporation Berhad, the company can pay up to 10 times of its operating profit to cover its interest, while Jaycorp Berhad can pay up to 37 times of its operating profit to cover its interest. Between Pelikan International Corporation Berhad and Jaycorp Berhad presents better performance in paying the interest of debt than Pelikan International Corporation Berhad. Thank you. I will pass the presentation to the next presenter.
Thank you to the previous presenter. I am Sharifah, Nuryn, Balqis, and I will conclude the whole financial statement analysis of Pelikan International Corporation Berhad and Jaycorp Berhad for the year end 2021. We have examined the liquidity ratios of both Pelikan and Jaycorp, but there is not much difference as they managed to have the capacity to settle the financial statements immediately. However, by current ratio, Jaycorp presents a higher rate in their current asset to repay their current liability. Although there is not much difference between both companies, Jaycorp still surpassed Pelikan by presenting the higher liquidity level with a total of RM2.04 of its liquid assets compared to Pelikan with only 94 cents to satisfy the financial obligations. We have analyzed the profitability ratio, which by gross profit ratio, Jaycorp shows a greater performance of 20.89% in generating gross profit compared to Pelikan with only 4.5%. However, by net profit ratio, Pelikan has gained a slightly better performance with 9.3% to generate its revenues after deducting all the taxes and expenses. Investors and creditors tend to prefer companies with rising and consistent return on capital employed. So it shows that Pelikan also gained a greater return, which indicates its profitability. Meanwhile, by the return of assets, Jaycorp performs better with a 3.43% difference from Pelikan. And Jaycorp is able to attract investors because this company can gain more revenues with by only less investment. Besides, the efficiency ratio is frequently used to evaluate how well a corporation utilizes its internal assets and liabilities. So by inventory turnover, Pelikan only takes shorter days as only 4.64 times and indicates that they are better at replacing their inventories immediately compared to Jaycorp with 6.16 times. Meanwhile, Jaycorp is better at collecting debts from the customers from the day sales credit made, which only takes 37.7 days. So Jaycorp also earns a higher ratio in total assets turnover as the company is more efficient in utilizing its asset to generate sales with a total of RM1.34 of their profit compared to Pelikan. Well, last but not least, gearing or leverage ratio measure the long-term financial stability of a company. So Jaycorp is more favorable at a rate only 24.96% of debt ratio than Pelikan at a rate of 66.02% financial dependency on debt. This means that Jaycorp's borrowing capacity is at low leverage and less risky. In fact, Jaycorp also has a better debt to equity ratio with lower leverage at a rate of 33.26% compared to Pelikan at 94.28 of leverage. We can show that Jaycorp also presents better ability in paying interest and how many times Jaycorp could cover its interest expenses. It has proven that Jaycorp does not have financial difficulties in settling its cost of borrowings. Well, considering all of the analysis as the investors, we have decided to choose Jaycorp Berhad as a potential company to invest in because of its performance in the business. Although Jaycorp is also a business that runs a large scale and massive resources of productions, they are still capable of attaining great performance in a financial aspect. So Jaycorp presents better performance in their financial activities that proves that they can gain a higher gross profit in the business. But regardless of the lower net profit ratio by Jaycorp, this company still managed to perform well in the return of assets as they are doing well at increasing profit with each investment they spend. Jaycorp performs better in collecting debt from their customers and resulting in a very good financial management that also contributes a good and positive impact on the other financial aspect. Well, lastly, it is indeed that Jaycorp presents the very best performance in its competency to maintain less borrowing capacity that relates to dependency on debt. To emphasize, Jaycorp is proven on perform as a less risky company with the amazing overall performance and potentially reliable to other investors and stakeholders too.